You think love completes you. You measure its truth by how firmly it confirms who you are. Yet the more firmly you cling to this picture, the more fragile it becomes. Yunus Emre challenged this starting point. He said love does not enlarge the self. It removes it. He treated love not as acquisition, but as a correction of a basic mistake, the mistake of taking the self as separate from the one it seeks. If love reaches what is absolute, what can remain of what is partial? If love claims ownership, is it still love or only attachment disguised as devotion? You face a simple test. When you say, "I love," do you intend to preserve the "I," or are you ready for it to end as a claim? Which do you actually want? You examine your habits. You say you love what affirms you, what agrees with you, what makes you feel coherent. You call this sincerity. But you notice a pattern. The self sits at the center and decides what counts as love. The arrangement is neat and flattering. It is also circular. Yunus Emre would call this the first veil. Love is still being used to secure identity. You ask whether a devotion that guards the self can ever reach beyond it. If your affection disappears when approval disappears, what did it depend on? If love exists only when it is returned, did it ever exist by itself? You begin to suspect that what you called love was a negotiation. Do you love truth or only the comfort that resembles it? Yunus Emre lived in 13th century Anatolia, a landscape of intellectual activity and spiritual contest. Scholars refined doctrine. Dervishes refined the inner life. Yunus Emre spoke in simple, direct language so that anyone could test themselves. He insisted that love is not an emotion to be displayed, nor a concept to be mastered, but a transformation to be verified in conduct and awareness. He did not reject learning or feeling. He put them in service to a clear aim, the end of the claim, "I stand apart." By returning to the root of separation, he reframed practice as removal rather than accumulation. If the goal is nearness to God, what must be surrendered first? Yunus Emre's central claim is terse. Real love ends separation. Separation is sustained by identification with a private center that treats everything else as other. As long as this center governs, love is filtered through gain and loss. When this center relaxes, relation changes. The measure of love is not intensity of feeling, but absence of ownership. You can test this without drama. Notice whether your devotion demands a return. Notice whether your kindness seeks a self-image as reward. Notice whether your reverence requires control. Where demand persists, separation persists. Where demand dissolves, relation simplifies. He taught that love is self-forgetting, not self-fulfillment. Recognition, not conquest. Service, not display. If love is what remains when the claim of mine is removed, how much of what you call love survives that removal? You resist. If the self loosens, who makes decisions, who maintains boundaries, who protects what is right? You fear that self-forgetting will become confusion or exploitation. Yunus Emre does not propose erasing discernment. He proposes erasing vanity. The person remains. The preoccupation with the person fades. Judgment remains. The hunger to be seen as right recedes. Responsibility remains. The performance of virtue dissolves. The conflict you feel is not between love and clarity. It is between love and image. You notice how often you narrate your own goodness to yourself. You notice how easily the story of me becomes the standard for truth. If the inner narrator paused, would actions become less precise or more honest? Can you separate necessary form from unnecessary self-importance? You test a small change. In conversation, you let go of the need to win. In apology, you let go of the need to be seen apologizing. In giving, you release the thought of being the giver. Nothing dramatic happens. Yet, the weight you carried lightens. The task is the same. The center is different. Yunus Emre would call this the first taste of freedom. Action without the pressure of self-approval. You see how ownership multiplies suffering. Before action, during action, after action. Without ownership, effort is precise and quiet. This is not detachment from life. It is detachment from the self-story attached to life. If attention can do the work without telling itself a story about the work, what exactly is reduced and what exactly is clarified? A deeper recognition appears. The statement "I love" divides experience into two. The one who loves stands here. The beloved stands there. Yunus Emre says that the vision is useful for learning, but false as a final view. In clear attention, the relation itself becomes primary. The lover and the beloved are positions within a single field of awareness. When the positions soften, relation becomes identity at its source. One reality knowing itself in relation. This does not cancel difference. It cancels isolation. You sense why Yunus Emre called love a remover rather than an addition. It removes the fiction of a separate knower. What you took as your private capacity is the movement of reality recognizing itself. If relation is primary, who remains to stand outside it and claim it? You sit with the conclusion and thought alone. If love is recognition rather than possession, the search simplifies. You do not need a special mood. You do not need elaborate words. You need honesty about motive and a willingness to release the claim of mine. Yunus Emre points to a stillness that is not withdrawal, but accuracy, the end of adding yourself to every act. In that stillness, respect is clean, gratitude is quiet, worship is natural. You are no longer trying to make love happen. You are allowing what is already true to be unobstructed. If nothing is added and nothing is performed, what prevents this clarity from being continuous? You translate the insight into ordinary choices. When you speak, you ask whether the sentence is a tool for truth or a signal for identity. When you listen, you ask whether attention is given freely or as preparation to respond. When you disagree, you ask whether the aim is understanding or victory. Yunus Emre's guidance becomes operational. Remove the claim of ownership and let the act be the act. Let gratitude be gratitude without the role of the grateful one. Let patience be patience without the title, the patient one. This is not humility as performance. It is precision as practice. Over time, the pressure to be someone fades and service becomes straightforward. If the person is lighter, is the task not clearer? Return to the opening question. You thought love completes the self. You see now that love completes the removal of the illusion that the self stands apart. Yunus Emre's teaching is not against the person. It is against the claim of separateness that burdens the person. Love, understood this way, is stable because it does not depend on return, image, or control. It is stable because it begins where ownership ends. You do not fall into emptiness. You fall out of pretense. You do not lose meaning. You lose the weight that blocks meaning. What remains is simple. Relation without possession, action without self-display, reverence without demand. If nothing needs to be added, what more is there to defend?